Got it.
Hey, folks, welcome back to What's Next Beyond Service. Today is our episode number 34 entitled Irish Blessing, and you'll see why here in a second. Our guest today is Angel Shaw. Angel, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate the invite.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so Angel and I have been connected now for not a whole, length of time, but we were connected on LinkedIn and then through a grouping of great folks under Sarah Carell, which is the power of our story. And so, over time, being together on the calls and in the groups, you start to get to know people. And I'm very excited to have Angel on today because she has a fantastic story and she's doing good things for people in life. And so whenever you come across people like that, you want to get to know them more, you want to be part of their circle. And, goodness abides with people like Angel. So that's a reason why she's on the show today. So just a little bit of information on Angel before we get started. Angel served for 12 plus years in the Canadian Armed Forces and their, national defense. She is an equestrian professional coach and trainer. She worked for a number of years in the logistics industry as a regional field investigation lead and a team trainer. That was North America. I believe it was in Texas, was most of that time, the great state of Texas, some people say. She was a police officer or peace officer in Alberta for 2+ years, I believe.
Mhm.
And currently, she owns her own business called Pegasus Life Solutions. She is a certified practitioner, lifestyle coach, author, and speaker. And again, welcome today. It's a pleasure to have you on, Angel.
Great. Cheers. Thank you so much, Scott.
Yeah,
Nice
absolutely.
introduction. Yeah, that was a nice introduction. Nice and concise.
Oh, well, good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
very nice and
yeah.
concise.
Well, thank you. So let's do this. It's always interesting when we have people on to get to know them a little bit. The intro is nice, but I always want to hear just a little bit more, about them, especially folks who served in the military to find out, what was their behind the scenes stories or what was their, reasons, desires for going into the military. And sometimes that ties to, maybe things that happened to them as, kids or, something that's triggered in their minds, hey, wow, the service is the thing for me. And sometimes there's a surprise story for, how that comes about. So let's start there. What can you share with us?
Well, for myself personally, what occurred that started, I guess, my travels is that I knew that my grandparents, both my grandmother, who was an army nurse, and my grandfather, who was infantry, of my mom's side of the family, and plus all the extended aunts and uncles. At this stage of my life, my grandparents all served in World War II. And
Wow.
and then my great grandfather, for example, served in both World War I and World War II, first in the Navy and then into the Air Force. But so I knew that that was already there, and there was only it was never they were telling stories; they were just making it a fact. Yeah, I served in the military. We didn't hear as a kid. I didn't hear too many of the stories. Then my mom did not. She applied to go into the military because, of course, it was kind of a second nature. Most people were either nurses, and she tried to get in the military. And her medical on her flat feet. She used to run around barefooted on the farm all the time when she was growing up, and that was fine. She stayed with nursing school and then went into the veterinarian side of things. So I was growing up in an agricultural environment, and I was the eldest of seven here. And you all of a sudden being the eldest, you carry on a lot of responsibility. You're having to look over your siblings and take care of things and take that on onus. And so there was already. They used to say, my mom used to jokingly said, I walk around the yard sometimes in my riding boots, and I'd smack a little riding crop on my pants on my boot, and just say, no, we have to go here. So it's kind of,
You're
here I am
taking
already
charge there.
acting already in charge, right?
Yeah.
And but I had a little bit of a. I'm not trying to pull down anybody. We do it the best we can. I'm a '60s baby. Things back then, when they said "spare the rod, spoil the child," all this. My life was a little bit. My upbringing was a little bit strict. I'm not going to deny that. It was a lot strict, and it was. And then it was complicated. There were some complications I did learn later. what was going down. But it drove me into a position that I'm leaving home at 15, and I still finished school. I went to stay with my uncle for a little bit. He was a police officer with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and then he went into corrections. And so it's not I didn't just completely jump onto the streets.
Right.
I still had that structure. I still, you still had to make your bed. You still had to, there was that there. And so I got it in my head as soon as I was 16, had a driver's license. I applied to go to the Reserve Corps, because the one thing that was driving me more than anything was that I didn't want to be a farm wife, or I had nothing to do with agriculture. I wanted to see the world, and I just kept hearing, those, like I said, those little stories. Now I know I got injured in Italy, in the trenches in Italy, is what my granddad said, and I'm thinking, I want to see these places. I want to know,
Yeah.
where, and especially when they've immigrated to Canada. So I wanted to again go to the home roots, see some things. I wanted to see the world. I wanted experiences, and it was good. So then, as soon as I graduated, then because I had a couple of years of reserve time, I went right into the Reg Force right after graduation. And even despite all my aptitude tests, the one place I just naturally fit into was the logistics transport field, because being the eldest, you drive combines, you're driving tractors, you're in the truck, in the grain trucks or whatever. So I had that skill set well established. Now I've asked to go pilot, and they kind of looked at me and laughed and said, number one, we don't have, now there's, remember, this is the early 80s, we don't have, that's not open to women, that trade is not open to women, it's not even an option on the table to discuss.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they said, number two. I went, oh, great, here comes. They said, you only graduated, and you nicely graduated. You didn't have honors, you don't have a university degree, and you're not bilingual, because we have two official languages in Canada.
Wow.
And I went, well, that kind of sucks. Well, maybe then what I'll do is okay, I'll take this now. I'll do the logistics thing. I'll get my feet in there, and then I'll apply later. And so I met all my credentials, and when I went after boot camp and they assign you out, we were it was called crew, and it was called a combat related environment for women. So my brother platoon was all combat arms. They were engineers, they were artillery guys, they were riflemen with the infantry. So I had was and you got 8 women and like another 96 guys. It was there was no quarter for us. They were very protective of us, but I
Right.
mean, we still did all our training the same as the guys. And gratefully, the program was a success because they actually selected women that had that potential. They had the athletic stamina. They had the right mindset. Some of them had already been like Army cadets or reservists, so they knew what they were getting into. It was yeah, it was really good. The challenge was, though, I got stationed to a field unit with the engineers out in British Columbia, and when we got stationed there, it was yeah, I was met with some pretty aggressive old boys school mentality. Like, you can't do this, or like they really tried to make it uncomfortable. And it was,
Yeah, that's not cool.
call
Yeah.
it stubborn redhead Irish pride. Because every time they said, you can't do this. Now, I'm going to step back a little bit here.
Watch.
Well, yeah, besides the tenacity, like,
Yeah.
watch me.
That's a hold my beer
The
moment, right?
Absolutely, yeah, kind of like that. Sure. But the bigger part was that they're like, besides the tenacity of my just saying and like, watch me. When I got in the service, I was a very light framed female. In fact, they postponed my application, because when I applied in April of that year I graduated, I only weighed 98 pounds. But
Oh
I'm a
wow.
farm kid, so I had functional muscle that was very strong. I
Sure.
could carry 5 gallon pails of water and just carry on. And it wasn't that wasn't physically fit, but they said, no, we kind of have a base standard. You got to be at least 100 pounds because your rucksack's 80. I mean, you haven't worked with my mom. She packs like 75 pound alfalfa bales,
That's right.
so like that's what we
You,
grew up with.
you should have a special pass for that.
I would think, right? Yeah, and so they kind of looked at me with already, like, they kind of already stereotyped me and pointed me with a brush, like, why are you here? Why do you think you can do this? And then I finally just got stood in my power and just said, listen here, that Celts in my family, the women fought beside our men. I don't know where the hell you came from, but we fight beside our men. And he went, okay, time out, like, easy, calm down, calm down.
You're giving me chill bumps there. That's yeah. No, that's you know you and I talked, and I do this with folks before interviews. There's only one person I didn't have a chance to talk with. I mean, of course, the interview went fine, but
Mhm.
I love to talk with people who I wind up interviewing, because you get to know them better and you hear stories. And we talked a little bit about this, and to hear you say that and see the fire in your eyes, and if you were there listening to it back in that time, it's probably like, okay, all right, that's cool, let's make this work. Because that's who you are. You're a person of a person of action, and you can do it, and you can, and you stand up for yourself, and that you're a trailblazer, and I know that, right?
Yes.
For the women that came behind you, and the opportunities that the women have, or for people like you who did stand up and say, no, this doesn't make sense, right? And I can do this, and let me show you. Give me a chance, right?
Mhm.
And that's how the door opens. So
Absolutely.
that's tremendous. That's motivating. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did make a difference, because then they late in the later 80s, then they did open up the trade for women pilots. I did reapply, and then they came back and said, I said, oh, don't give me your BS now. Like, I'm ready for this. I've been training, I'm ready. And they said, no, you've developed an astigmatism in your left eye. You do not have 20/20 vision.
Mm.
We cannot accept you. And I said, well, then I'll go get laser surgery. No, you cannot get laser surgery while you're in the service. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I went, well, dang, I'm not. So then I thought, well, what's the next best thing I could possibly do? And then I put my name in for airborne cadre. I wanted to get my jump wings. And again, that was met with a lot of rebuttal. When I finally did get my wings, I already had two kids.
Oh, wow.
I was 25. I already had my two kids, and of course, when you show up, I remember showing up to the cadre, and I'm wearing like literally like riding breeks and riding boots and a long jacket, and I came in, dress proper, and everybody was kind of sitting there going, look, kind of give me that. Who is that? Why are they here? Why are they standing here? Whose girlfriend is this? And finally, they were good. Okay, guys, assemble up. We're going to get in formation. And he says, whoever owns that piece of kit, please tell her to leave. And I came right through the men like, I know you're going to deal with me. And I handed over my papers and said, oh yeah, I'm reporting in. And it was
Oh,
like everybody
geez.
went like mouths agape, eyes bugged out of this, and then of course there's some whispers, she ain't gonna make the first day, or
Mm.
whatever there's. But yeah, we started off with like 100 and was sorry, it was like 134 guys, and at that day when we hit wings parade, and I'm standing on that parade square, and they're the routine about how you get
Oh,
your
yeah.
get your
Yep.
wings. Well, smacked me in the chest and gave me my wings. But even before he did it, he said, "Aren't you going to quit?" Because they harassed me every day. Are you going to quit? Yeah, you got to quit.
Jeez.
No, you got to quit. Oh, come on, put in. You're going to quit. And I just like no. And I finally just told him as warrant. I said, Dad, just give me my damn wings. I earned it fair and square. And so we
And
left
you
when we
you did,
graduated.
right? I mean, you earned it. And so
Yeah,
the fact that they were still razzing you about that meant that they knew you earned it, right?
right.
You earned
Yeah.
their respect. And but that comment about the that kit comment, man,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. And
Yeah.
women obviously go through stuff like that, and that's changing. I
Hmm.
truly believe that, and I share with you that my wife kind of dealt with some of that in her early career as an engineer. When she would have to go into the yard at the shipyard where she worked, and it's not that they're bad people necessarily. They just come from a different time, and so they
Right.
see things differently. And it doesn't mean they can't be changed, right?
Hmm.
They see things, and the right people, show them that hey, change is possible, and folks can do this. Women are absolutely, in my judgment, women are absolutely smarter than men, right? I mean, I
Okay.
truly believe that, because guys do dumb stuff, but women are very capable, and there's no reason why if women or anybody for that matter, if you meet a standard, you meet a standard, and
Hmm.
there's no discussion, right? And that's the way things should be. But anyhow, so kind of getting on the soapbox there,
No,
but
that's good.
yeah. And so the other thing, that the attrition rate that jump school had was extremely high.
Hmm.
and you made it through that. So that says
Yes.
really a lot about you, just in that segment of your life. That's pretty incredible.
The guys had told me on in fact it was the airborne guys I had met up that we were in Trenton, and they said, do you realize that in the 25-year history of the Canadian Airborne Regiment, like you're the 30th woman to have graduated and earned her wings? I went,
Wow.
that's okay, thanks. And knowing full well that they run a course every 3.5 weeks, right? There's somebody going through. And the numbers, like you guaranteed over 100 personnel. And then also you have a francophone and an anglophone group. So an English group and a French group. Because the
Hmm.
Bandous is the French jumpers, right? And yeah, so they're the numbers that they punch out per year, or get there, and then how many don't get their wings, right? And I fought tooth and nail, and it was great because my warrant officer was amazing. World Carlton, I remember I was in CFB Petawawa. This is again a big army base, and every day he would call me into his office, and every time I came into his office, I had to pull off 10 chin-ups, and every time I left his office, I had to punch out another 10 chin-ups. And then he would all of a sudden, I was getting ready, I was getting psychologically psyched. He said, it's too easy. Then he starts burying it. He says, okay, I want narrow grip, then I want wide grip behind your head. And I'm like, holy Lord. And he says, no, you're not, because I flat out said to him, he says, how bad do you want this? I said, I'd rather go AWOL than come back without my wings. He goes, all right, I'll fix you.
Well, that's
But it
good.
did. Like,
Yeah, isn't it amazing how people come into your path,
yes.
and it's, you wonder why, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes there are people there that provide, that extra push, that extra, okay, I see that this person sees something in me, and I don't want to let them down either, because they're taking a step towards me. So then that helps you, a mentor, somebody that's lighting a fire under you, or someone that's, even if they're just kind of thumping your chest a bit, they're
Hmm.
testing your mettle, right? And then when
Absolutely.
you prove it to them, they become an advocate, and that's kind of cool how that works sometimes. So,
And so with the airborne regiment, airborne truckers are few and far between because airborne needs more guys on the ground. So having an actual trucker in the unit they pretty much had their quota filled. So I was kind of on standby, but I kept up with the training, and I really got into, because of it, because of my fitness and my physique, and I wanted to stay strong. I hooked up with the guys, and we hit the gym. We hit the gym hard, and that put me into all of a sudden somebody came up and said, why don't you do this bodybuilding competition? There's an invitational for the military out in Newfoundland, Gander, Newfoundland. They'll fly out. And I remember my CO says, he goes, as long as you bring home some hardware, he says, I'll sponsor this. Like, and then the doggone trophy, I stepped out there, I did my thing, and got my, I remember the very first competition, I got second, but the last one I got first. But I
oh,
remember that
nice.
last trophy was just about as tall as I was. He tried to fight with us on a plane.
That's funny. And I'm sure that's probably still in the showcase,
Yeah.
back at the command. That's awesome.
And it just did my entire dedication to the sports. Like all of a sudden I realized, wait a second, let me get this right. If I stay being a hardcore competitive athlete, that they'll pay for everything. They'll pay for the food and the flights and the competitions. And I'm like, all right, okay, so I'm going to earn this paycheck being a jock, being an athlete. So I was technically
Right.
like a professional athlete for the military, and that really worked
Wow.
in my favor. Now I still did my job, don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
they just found that I had a good um, rapport with the dignitaries, and I got put into what's called VIP division. And now you're driving the bulletproof Mercedes. You're handling all the high end dignitaries globally. I like the highest I drove. I got to drive. It was pretty cool when you get to drive the highest ranking officer in the largest army in the world. This is when the USSR was still one big country, right?
Right.
And I remember the television news world was coming up and trying to interview me, like, this must be quite the thing to do. And I'm like, I guess, like, I'm doing my job. What do you want me to say? I never had that stardom I mentality, like when some who, regardless of who's who in the zoo, if it was the anybody from the royal family, or any, like I said, any global dignitary or high ranking officer. I've driven, I don't know how many 5-star generals who came up to the engineer base in Chilliwack. But it just, yeah, and I just got a good reputation and a good rapport and did my job exceptionally well. that so much so that between that was when I got my first commemorative medal that was approved by the Queen and was and handed over by the Governor General of Canada. And they said it's no, if it's for your exemplary military, work that you do. And
Wow.
they were donating that out. But then what the surprise was is that I was also a volunteer for a lot of things, like everything from Big Sisters to even the Army Cadet Corps. Now, the Army Cadet Corps because I was transportation and the connections I had, the Engineer Cadet Corps at that time was like one of the last placing cadet companies like in Canada. And so between myself and a couple RCMP officers that I knew, um, we all kind of, when we pulled together and pulled our resources together, we ended up number one. We ended up within a year, we became the number one Army Cadet Corps in the country.
Wow.
And so then, like I said, in between that and the Big Sisters and the different things that I did, then I got a civilian honor on top of that. And that they say it was issued. So this was issued in 92. Yeah, I got the military medal. The military honors was done in 92, but in 93, in the spring of 93, they also had put me up for they said they awarded it to civilians as well as military members to recognize, for all walks of life from every region of ethnocultural backgrounds, just to that made a significant contribution to their communities and their countries and whatever how they perceived it, right?
Right.
And I've never in my life did I ever do anything with the intention of some reward for it. It's just because I was just driven to help. And
Right.
then I started seeing those little things happening because the guys would like sometimes being a female. Like I remember with the RCR group out of Petawawa, and I was F troop, which is the refueling tender groups. And these guys would come in all their labs and you refuel them up and you get talking to them, and all of a sudden you'll have that one person comes and goes, "Do you have a moment? I've ought to talk to somebody and I don't know what to do." And he was having a real bad issue with his marriage. He says, "You're a woman. Tell me what I'm supposed to do with this. I'm trying to save my marriage." And then
Wow.
it was kind of fascinating how those the dynamics started to unfold because then more people started coming, asking for advice, asking for things, and it was like a natural. I was playing like, well, almost like a big sister. That's what it
Right.
felt like. I'm playing the big sister role again. Here you kind of give that
Yeah,
guidance
something
out.
you're familiar with, right?
Yeah, and you call them out on their BS.
Yeah.
Well, I like that was dumb. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're Army. You've done effed up, buddy.
Yeah, that's right.
This is how you're going to fix this.
Well, and
you
and
know.
people need to hear that too, right?
hmm
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's yeah, and then I elected So after Op Mandarin, which the Yugoslavia, um, I put in. It came up with This is right before we're getting everybody's talking about Afghanistan too, because they already did the one first. We already did like my former husband was an engineer. He was explosives ordnance specialist.
Hmm.
So they sent them over to put the fires out, of course. And he came back a very changed man. And then eventually our marriage had dissolved. So then there was talk, okay, now we're going to get this. Now all of a sudden it's going to happen again where we're getting going to deploy back out there. But now, like I said, I've got two kids and I'm sitting there going, no, I've hardly spent any time with them. And it really hit home hard. It really hit home hard when I remember my son waking up in the middle of the night and he was screaming. He was having some sort of a night terror and I don't know why. And he never said what it was. And of course, he's just little at the time. I think at the time he was 5. And I went in there to comfort him, and he pushed me away and says, "I don't need you. I want Nala." And then Nala was the babysitter. I went,
Wow.
"Wow,
Yeah.
oh
Mm.
wow!" And I went, "All right." So that was my first warning. That was that first flag. You call the first flag. Kind of lights turn on. You went, hmm. And then what happened was the airborne regiment got disbanded because of Somalia. We had some a really bad situation that occurred that involved the military, kind of in a disgraceful component, and the Canadian Airborne Regiment, as we knew it, they still have an airborne. I mean, but at that particular group had been
Right.
disbanded, and I'm sitting there going, now what do I do? Like I'm trained up, and now that chance that I was waiting for to get in there is now gone. Now what do I do? And then, so I asked if I could go JTF. This is Joint Task Force, and this is like, yeah, this is your Secret Service group, your Special Service group. And I just my CEO flat out said, Angel, he says, damn it, he said, I know your personality type. He says you will kill yourself before you fail. And he says, and I can't consciously sign this knowing you've got 2 kids at home. And I'm like, what the hell? So I was shocked. I was like, you would think that if you got an A game player that he would just sign this and go, do this. But no, he just he put that kind of kibosh in it, and I really didn't know where I was supposed to go. I didn't feel like needed to go step backwards, but I worked so hard to get where I was at. And then they had offered a forces reduction plan because it was so top heavy, and there was so many people. Like there was, so they were saying, well, to make room for some of these younger people to get promoted, we're going to offer like this early retirement package. And it was just before Afghanistan, and I thought to myself, okay, my son was that was the catalyst, and I thought to myself, all right, I'm going to put in an early resignation. And then did I ever piss off a lot of people? Because my career managers looked at me and said, "Do you realize you're number 2 on the promotion board for your sergeants? And like,
Oh,
like,
wow.
and we're going to move you here, and we're going to do this." And I'm like, "No." And they said, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'll figure it out. I've got skills. I got stuff. I can do things." And that's what happened. I put my name in, and the rest, like I said, the rest is kind of the military was, but there was nothing there. And I mean nothing for me, being that they had a guy to help me write my resume, and he was, no, I'm sorry, he had no knowledge of how to take our military skills and transfer them. So he
Right.
asked me in our little sit down interview, he says, "Oh, you're a farm kid. Oh, you're in the military, so you can go as being a security guard, or you can be like a cab driver or something along the lines." Driver went, are
Yeah,
you are
canned
you
stuff.
kidding me?
Yeah.
Do you know who
Mm,
I like? Do you know
right.
I have clearances like to secret because of who I handle, and I was, so that's when when they say do what you love. I had to do this on my own. Do what you love, because what ended up happening is that um I took some books. I went to a library, and one was like, "What color is your parachute?" And it helps you kind of streamline
Yep.
all your
Hmm.
skills and makes it kind of helps you hone down. And the final summary was, "You're going to be like, you should be in the military, or you should be a police officer." I'm like, really? I need something more to work with. So I had to actually kind of look down the list. Where else can I fit? And they were saying like things like lawyer or counselor. I went, all right. So I decided for that time I was going to do more of the kind of hone towards the law enforcement side, but not join the police force, because I'm just jumping into the same situation. But at corrections, there was I got called up to assist with women's correctional facilities because of my equine background. Now I
Okay.
had already done my certifications, and as a registered equine professional, certified, for North America and also the UK. And I got called up for this, and then I seen how this horse program was being used to help rehabilitate the parolees, or to that was sorry, the incarcerees that were getting eligible for parole.
Hmm.
And I've seen how the shift changed, and applying that and the psychology and the stuff, and a little bit of an indigenous element to it too. But the transformation over the 5 years, we only had one repeat offender come back into the system. And I've seen how
Wow.
much this changed their lives. I said, why couldn't we do this for, like, say, military veterans? And at that time, again, this is now the mid '90s or whatever, just before millennia, and they
Oh,
had
it's the
said
ice age when it comes to military
down, they,
transition, right?
yeah, they just said, "Oh hell no, we're not doing that."
Mm,
I'm like, why? But I didn't have that plan. I didn't have that. This is how we're going to do it mentality.
sure.
I just asked, and so it's okay. It's okay. I was just a little ahead of my time,
Right.
right? Just a little ahead of my time.
Yeah, no, and everything you're saying, it's for the folks that are transitioning from service now, it's always where are you in time, right? And
Hmm.
what's happening. And when you tell people, oh, well, when I transitioned back in, the 90s or in the
Hmm.
2000s, again, the ice age, stone age of transition, there really wasn't anything out there.
Hmm.
Today you have tens of thousands of
Yes.
nonprofits that are facing inwards to receive people coming from the military.
Hmm.
The VA has gotten better, here, stateside. There's always issues, but I think on mass things have gotten better.
Hmm.
Even on the bases, the transition programs, some of the people that have been there for years, decades, have moved on, and then folks with new ideas, some folks that are maybe a little more tech savvy have come in, and so things are changing to where they're taking transition a little bit more serious. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and there are new programs coming in. Whether it's Skill Bridge, here in the U.S. under the Department of Defense, there's a Skill Bridge program, which it's a great opportunity. But again, there are also companies and nonprofits that have fellowships and things like that, to where folks can wind up working in a capacity as they're transitioning from service, and that can roll into a job, or at least maybe give you connections for that next thing. So yeah, it's a whole different landscape today than it was for the time, especially that you're talking about, because there was not much out there. And so you did have to kind of figure it out. So, folks today, even though it's not easy, transition's it's different for everybody, but your opportunities and the amount of folks that are willing to, assist and kind of lead you are it's so much different now.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I'll say this: when I was in the right environments, when I said I was retired, military, I even had people doing background checks on me. I left Canada to try and get my head right. I started getting that. I didn't realize that at the time what it was, but I just felt there's something wrong, and I couldn't. I was getting. I wouldn't cry, and all of a sudden now I'm crying, and all of a sudden, and then I would get angry. I would get extremely angry. I'm very volatile. My daughter will attest to that, and I couldn't understand why I'm this emotional train wreck. And I couldn't, and I had to actually go to the doctor and say, listen, I need, there's something wrong. I got this train wreck going in my head. And here he's like, okay, I don't want you to get hooked on this, but we'll give you something here to just help you just calm and get grounded.
Sure.
And I am that type of personality. I abhor, to be honest, pharmaceuticals. And I've done everything holistically. I guess it's because both my mom and my gran being very holistic health practitioners. But I was said, okay, once I could feel, I could take that edge off, and they gave me it was Ativan. So I'm sitting there when finally just holy crap, I could breathe, because I just kept everything so tight. I was so angry and I just a boiling ball of emotions, and I didn't know what direction it was going. It was even to the point where your anxiety is getting back. You're thinking you're having a heart attack.
Mm.
And then before I talked to the doctor, I realized I was on a dangerous slippery slope, because I was self medicating with painkillers and alcohol, trying to be numb.
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, a very dangerous cocktail. Like, I'm very grateful that whatever reason I didn't, like, I was still here to make that choice, and raise my kids. Because there was times when after getting out of the military, losing that, I think it's when you lose your identity. That's what I narrowed it down to. I didn't know what
Yeah.
it was before, but when you dedicate so much of your heart, your soul, your blood, sweat, and tears, the camaraderie, and you are military. Like, there is no change. There is not. That's not an option. I never say I'm ex-army. I'm retired
Mhm.
from the
Right.
army, and so that's always inside me. But yeah, it was still, I realized after now, like through my self-help stuff, it was a loss of identity. And
Yeah.
I really need to emphasize that to people that are leaving the service. If you dedicated yourself to your field, like, it's going to be a little bit of a change becoming a civilian. That they did everything in their power to strip you down to become a soldier or whatever field you're going to get into, and rebuild you. And then when you leave the military, that's not their obligation to reform who you are. And a lot of us were escaping who we were to become,
That's a
to
good
become maybe
point.
something of worth,
Sure.
right? And yeah,
Absolutely.
so it was that
Well,
was that was a grand challenge.
yeah, Angel, thank you for bringing that up and talking to that. I agree wholeheartedly. I think that is absolutely the case. And and it impacts people differently. Some people more than others, but I think it's there for everybody. It just depends, where you fall on that scale. And it could really be, I look at it as one of life's significant emotional events that we have in life. A death in the family,
Mhm.
a move, transitioning out of the military. I think it's right up there in that
Mhm.
category because of what you just said. Because you are a different person. You're not the same person that you were when you went in.
Mhm.
You're coming out, and there's no real program to kind of deprogram you to come
Mhm.
back into society. And you're everything that you've known from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed at night, what you dream, it's everything's
Mhm.
military.
Mhm. You're right.
And then that one day it's gone. And then okay, you just wake up from this very long dream, and you're like you're like Rip Van Winkle, or it's like, okay, what the
Yes.
heck, what do I do now? And yeah, that it absolutely, depending on how things go, some bad things can happen, and that's why the work you're doing now, and you know podcasts like this are designed to show this to people, to say, hey, this is out there. You got to be aware of it, and the more that you're aware of it before you leave the military, the better. Because if you understand that, hey, this is out there, this could happen. Oh wow, okay, well, so what can I do about it?
Mhm.
And so then there's a list of things, right? Which we can talk about that maybe, but
Mhm.
uh, so the awareness of it is huge.
Absolutely.
Because when you go into it blindly and it hits you right in the face, it's like, whoa, I man, I had no idea this was coming. What
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
this? And sometimes it might take you a while to figure out, why do I feel like this? And then it's, oh well, geez, well, maybe it's because I'm not associated with all the things that made me who I was. Even though you're still some of those things, you're still a lot of those things. It's just you're not doing it, for a job, for a
Right.
profession.
Yes.
But anyhow, so yeah, so getting back to your story here. Sorry,
Oh
but
no,
I, I,
that's
I
no,
do
that's
want to thank
perfect.
you for bringing that up, because it's a huge element.
It is and it is. It's very. I felt it was very important to let people know that, like you said, if you start feeling, because the dumb thing I did was I did the exact opposite. You're not supposed to do. I disappeared. I went into my own self. I never talked to buddy. I just kept internalizing everything. I had nothing to do with the military. I totally like, even kind of disowned my military friends, because I was like, I'm not. Oh gosh, I'm a wreck. What the heck's wrong with me? I'm not. That's not who they know me to be. You
Sure.
know, and it was almost embarrassing. I thought, but I like the whole thing. Doing it alone was asinine, because all I did was keep spiraling downwards. And there was, I'm not saying every day was a bad day. I'm not saying every day was a good day. But it was a roller coaster for me. Like, it was high, it was low. It was just like I couldn't find stability. The one thing I had, thank God, was because of working with the horses. Like, horses are a very empathic animal, and you have to check your attitude before you start working with these guys, because they're going to give you a reality check. And I had it was kind of strange. I was kind of in my head, not paying attention. I had a freak accident. And I went from working down in Texas with all these high end. We're talking horses that are were like $500,000. Some of these horses, right? And we were getting ready for the worlds, and the world cutting and reining championships. And I was leading this one stallion across the yard, and he slipped. I got when he entered the barn, he had a little bit of frost on his feet, and he sat down. He knocked out my knee, and then I
Ooh.
realized when I actually, when he fell on top of me is when he finished me off, because he ripped out every ligament in my knee. The only thing holding my leg together was patella ligament, skin, and femoral artery. Oh, and
Oh
my
my
right arm.
gosh.
So
Wow.
they told me in Texas flat out, they said, you do not have near enough insurance to cover the amount of surgeries and repairs we're going to have to do. And they said, yeah, I think you best bet going back to Canada. And I went, okay. So that I just
Mm.
realized. And then they told me, like, no, this is serious. Like, 2 years, 6 surgeries. I lost everything. I had a six-figure income. I was doing really well. I was, like I said, pursuing the dream. And I had to liquidate everything: trailers, trucks, horses, you name it. I was even right down to the light, right off I remember my last leather jacket, kind of like my leather, what do you call it, a riding jacket. And
Hmm.
said, yeah, I said, just to make sure that I would avoid bankruptcy at all costs. And I,
Wow.
yeah, and again, never, no, never once did I ever say use the veterans side of things, because we didn't have a veterans food bank at the time. We didn't have these things, and I didn't even think about even calling upon it. I didn't even. I guess because I was just felt, well, now I'm not part of the army. Now they don't have nothing to do with me. There was some,
Hmm.
I don't know what that thinking was, but I just didn't
Right.
think there was anything there for me, which I now know is like not the truth. But um, so I am sitting in a hospital bed, and after one of my surgeries, in a boohoo moment, I guess you call it, feeling sorry for myself. And what happened was, it was when The Secret came out. The Secret, now, if anybody doesn't know, it's a law of attraction. Now, there should be enough people who've heard of it by now, because that came out in 2007. And but anyways, it was Jack Canfield who said, like, okay, hey, when you're trying to get through your life, and Winston Churchill said, when going through hell, just keep going,
That's right.
right? So here he is. He's saying you can leave from San Diego, California, and you can drive all the way to New York State. And he says, and you can do it at night, and your headlights will illuminate in front of you 200 feet, and you just keep following. As long as you stay on that route, you're going to get there. And for some reason, that having that conversation or listening to his story, and then the next guy speaking had a plane crash, and he couldn't even breathe. Like, I'm like, this guy survived. He can't even breathe. He's got a tube in his throat, and I'm feeling sorry for sorry for myself because I got a busted up knee. I went, oh,
Mhm.
Angel, come on, you got to get your head out of yours. You gotta think about this. How do you want to guide your life? And I really delved deep into the counseling and coaching and self help psychology, and changed my whole dynamics of how I proved that. It only When I was on they put me on social assistance disability for $700 a month. Go figure that. How are you going to exist on this? But I did it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
vowed that it's like, as Jack had said, I put $100,000 on my wall and said, I'm going to make it. And I did that whole thing, and things just unfolded as it said it would. And then within 4 years, even my accountant goes, I can't believe that she went from 17,000, like not even 17,000 that one year, because you're on disability, or 7,000. Yeah, no, sorry, 7,000. $7,000 in one year in disability. He said in 4 years, now you're back at 150. How the heck did that happen? And I went, tenacity. Just, I believed in me, and I believed in the process. I believed in the law of reciprocity. I believed in, being open to receive. And so some people may look at me as a little bit hokey with that spiritual message, but
No.
it's saved. I'm telling you, it saved my life. It changed my world, and how I try to work with people. It's give them that hope. Just give them that one conversation of hope.
Yeah.
You know.
Man, I mean, and absolutely, I say amen to that. I mean, hope, you have to have hope. People say, hope's not a plan.
Hmm.
Okay, but there's more to it than just the analytical, making of a plan and executing, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
hope is what sustains you, and the perspective that comes with that when you see other people, like you said, and not that you're comparing, but you see someone else like this gentleman that, you know, had to have the air tube because, of
Hmm. Hmm.
how life threatening his scenario was. And then when you, like you look at yourself and, when you look at it in isolation, a blown out knee is horrible because
Hmm.
there's a lot that went into, repairing you,
Hmm.
physically. You've lost everything. I mean, you went through a lot. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not minimizing any of that. But when you see what happens in other people's lives,
Yeah.
that gives you perspective. And then when you
Hmm.
see that they're making it, that they had hope too, that they followed, uh, whatever they did helped them to get to where they were at that point, to where they're
Yeah.
up telling people about, well, this happened to me and this is how I came through, my bad times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's empowering and it is hopeful. And we
Hmm.
need stories like this. And this is another reason why I wanted to have you on because of your story and your ability to share your story the way that you're doing it. And yeah, I mean, that is amazing. And then the fact that, another thing, just kind of talking here, is that thankfully, we have social safety nets. I believe in those, right? Because things happen in life. And some people are just, for whatever reason, some people aren't capable and they need help, right?
Hmm.
They may have, either, it's just people have problems. Now, there are folks that, just like in life, there's always folks that take advantage of things. And, that's not what I'm talking about.
No.
I'm talking about, that there are things that we as people believe are important, to help, to give a hand up. So you were in that circumstance, but you didn't stay there.
No.
You empowered yourself, you used it. And what's interesting is because of who you are, I bet that was a tough place for you to be
Hmm.
because you probably thought you'd never be there,
Hmm.
and you probably were even a little bit like, oh, geez, because there's some, you have pride, and sometimes pride
Yeah.
gets in the way of
Absolutely.
moving forward, right? And so accepting that, or maybe you were just like, I don't have any other alternatives, so I'll accept it.
Hmm.
Whatever that is, but you moved on from it, and look at you now. Look at the things, and we're going to talk about that. Look at the things that have happened since that moment in your life. I think
Hmm.
that's incredible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, like I said, then with having that open mind to receive, I can't emphasize how empowering that is to feel self-worth. Now, I had to go on a little sabbatical to Spain to kind of purge the some of the guilt I was carrying. And as I'm
It's not
sitting
a
there,
bad place to go either.
yeah, it's actually a really nice place to get out to.
Yeah.
But there's a place in north of Barcelona called Montserrat, and Montserrat's got a big cathedral, but it was also a place where the Black Madonna is said to the fountain there.
Hmm.
And I really just desperately just wanted, like, I felt like some part of me, I don't know, I can't explain it, but I just felt, okay, my soul is gone and I need to have it back, and I will do what it takes, whatever you got, whatever you need to do to get my soul back, I will do this. And then and it was weird because call it divine, spiritual, whatever. I had this message that just said, you've already been forgiven. It's you that has to forgive you to move forward. And that was, again, that just opened up another big floodgate of stuff that for opportunities and potential. Because if you don't feel within your heart that you're worthy, then you just sit there in this bottomless pit of despair. And I can't tell you that we all deserve to have a happiness. We all deserve to have, you know, a life. And we're our own worst critics. So
Yeah.
these little things that came out, because then, like I said, things just happened for me. I even survived a house fire after it. But the
Mm.
generosity from all the people over the world that came in, they put a GoFundMe account, and there was people coming in from kids I helped in, gosh, in the Cadet Corps, kids that I helped in, like, from the when I used to do foreign exchange host parenting, the
Hmm.
big sisters and stuff. These people, like,
Yeah.
I was seeing transactions coming in from Yemen. I'm like, who do I know in Yemen? I don't know anybody in Yemen. So I was like, okay, okay.
Wow.
And it just because they grew up, their kids, they grew up to be adults, and they're done their lives. They heard the situation, and they were very generous. And I just keep putting that back out there because I still volunteered. We have things like Homes for Heroes. Now, these are the homeless veterans that we have these little modular compartments to help get them reestablished, get their feet back underneath them, and help them, guide. And I've been asked to now take on the role of to assist their peer to peer
Hmm.
conversations, coffee. We get together and talk and help
Yeah.
things with there. Same with the Veterans Food Bank. That again, trying to help where we can. I have an agricultural family. I got sister raised a seed, mom raised cattle, and I'm saying, well, you guys can donate, let's say one beef a year or one sheep or a couple of sheep or whatever. Is it really, like I said, that's your tithing? If you don't have time or money or talent, it's talent, right? Time, money, or talent. You're supposed to tithe, and I said, because that will exponentially reciprocate back to you. Have that mentality.
Yeah.
Don't always sit there with
Absolutely.
a sense of lack. Believe that it's gonna come back whatever you put out in the universe. And so I said in my process here of doing my, like, there's the work that kind of supplemented it because I was being a parallelpreneur. I was kind of working still in the peace officer side of things, but still coaching, and I was doing a lot of pro bono work. And so that's now where I'm dedicated now my attention to. Finish. I'm working right now. It's called the Certified Police Wellness Officer. So this is to help with that with the trauma post incident, for
Hmm.
example, that they use that we have for let's say the police officers, and wrapping up that course, and I'm then working on towards here my master's degree, and same thing, and then psychophysiology, because a lot of the stuff in trauma we embed is actually in our bodies. And we need, and I, because being an athlete, being dedicated my life to sports, I thought this made perfect sense. It is that holistic trinity. You have to have your mindset. You have to have your body in health. You have to have that you're right with yourself, like in spiritual capacity, to incorporate those all three to make that. It's a tripod. Think about it when you're putting a
Sure.
tripod on with a machine gun. That's it's essential to keep everything going down range. That's the best way I can explain to the guys that get it, right? But
All right.
and so yeah, so Pegasus Life Solutions, because I knew that, not just because doing the airborne thing, but the Pegasus was actually like lifting the air superiority. You're getting lifted up because
All right.
that's according to the legend. That's why Bill Sulfuron, won his fight, is because he had this air superiority advantage.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking. How I
Yeah.
thought why I put that name for the business.
Well, yeah, I love the symbolism there. That it's very meaningful,
Mhm.
and just listening to your story, Angel, and you know, going back to again your beginnings,
Mhm.
the life that you led, being on the farm,
Hmm.
being in the military. You were a big sister, growing up, but then you were also somebody that people came to because they saw something in you or they felt like they could share with you, that, you would be honest with them in opinion, that you would listen, you wouldn't just hear them, but you would listen, you would give advice. And, even though we have problems in life and we have our ups and downs, you were able to gather yourself, make good of your situation, and you are coming back around to helping people. That seems like that's innate in you, to be of service to others, because people helped you too. And I love this with people who do what you're doing, because whether it's a physical injury, whether it's a psychological injury, whatever it might be that sets you back, when you are open and you can receive that help,
Hmm.
that is a blessing. But what's even more to me, when you measure, somebody's worth, for lack of a better word, it's okay. We all have problems. Well, what do you do? Do you wallow in your problem, or do you move forward? And who do you become after hard times? Right.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that's so important. When you fall down, do you get back up? Right. And then one other thing that I think is what I'm really leading to here is essential is you've gone through the gauntlet, you've failed, you've fallen, whatever, you've gotten up, dusted yourself off, you've moved forward. But do you turn around to see who else is struggling?
Hmm.
And because of what you've been through, are you going to take the time and reach your hand out to someone to help them up? And that's exactly what you're doing. And that speaks so highly of you as a person and your character, and people like you who do this, because we're only on this earth for a very short period of
True
time.
that. Yeah.
What's important in life? There's a lot of things important, but when you take that deep breath and you look and you see, what's the common thing? People, right?
Yeah.
People are everywhere. We know that. We have to realize that we're here. We need to figure things out. We need to love each other. We need to be understanding. We need to work together, and we need to help each other. And the fact that again, you're helping people get through struggles because you survived and you've learned and you're educating yourself too. You had the life experience, but you went back to school. You're getting a master's. You're certified in coaching, and you're doing all the right things that are going to put the arrows in your quiver, so
Hmm.
that when people look at you, they're going to say, "Oh, wow, she's got her education, she's got her training, she's got her life experience. She was in the military. She was, in logistics. She was also a police officer. Look at the breadth of experience this person has to talk to the issues you talk to now, with authority, with empathy. I think that's amazing. And this might sound hokey. I'm proud of you. I mean, I think that's tremendous.
Oh, thanks. No, thank you. I appreciate. No, no, I
Absolutely.
appreciate that. It's sometimes you hear people come up to you, or the civilians, and they say, "Thank you for your service," and I'm like, "But do you genuinely know what it's done?" Like, and I'm not just trying to discredit them. I'm not saying that's not what I'm saying here. Don't please don't misconstrue that. But but when you say that, and you have say somebody who's wanting to help, and God bless their hearts, they really want to help. And so they ask if there's anything, building that trust though. Like, we're not just going to openly pour our soul out to a civilian stranger, because that was the one thing that my granddad and I had, because he went through hell with his stuff and had
I bet.
bottled it up. And it wasn't until here, like I said, we were sitting over a big thing of rum, and he started telling his stories. And it actually, my mom had always, we didn't know, but she was over, listen, over, like over here, what do you call it, eavesdropping kind of. And I seen her, and I looked at her, and she says, "Why do you rate?" And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "I'm like, this is two soldiers having a conversation. Why do you rate?" We've had to listen, like, we've had to put up with all his trauma, like, no,
Mm,
not knowing like why he's angry and why he's going through this and why this. And never said anything, but he told you. And that's that camaraderie. Like, that's
yeah,
even his family member. What we do to our family, we don't even realize what we're doing to our families.
that's
And
true.
it's really imperative that, you have that someone you can talk to so that you can work it through. And then we also got to take a look and say, how can we help our families? Because
Yeah.
that it's not vicarious trauma. It's still an integrated trauma that we need to
Yeah.
help them with. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. The trust thing is so important. It's real, and uh, sometimes I think people leaving military service or first responders, you implicitly trust that guy or gal on your left and right.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the culture, that's the environment. You have to be able to trust those folks, and they've earned your trust, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you leave that, you can fall victim to trusting people maybe easier or more than you should, and
Mm-hmm.
trusting somebody who doesn't have that cultural, connection,
Mm-hmm.
that understand trust the same way that you do, even,
Yeah.
you can wind up, you know, doing a disservice to yourself by trusting the wrong people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's something I think folks who transition need to absolutely understand about trust. And your point about family, my grandfather was a Marine. He fought in the Second World War, and he never talked about. He was in the Battle of Tarawa, and that was a very,
Mm-hmm.
all the South Pacific battles were pretty
Right.
messy, and he never really talked about it. He only talked about the good stuff, about being a Marine, all the rah rah stuff. And it wasn't until I became a Marine that he shared some stories with me
Mm-hmm.
that were like,
Okay.
oh God, and he
Yeah.
never talked to anybody. Same,
Yeah.
I mean, he was a good man. He just held it all in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He grew up. He was a good person. He was a fireman for 35 years after the Marine Corps. And I've shared this a couple times, but the hardest thing, that the hardest memory he has, he saw a lot of bad things in the Marine Corps, but he showed up to, they went to a fire and they got there, and they didn't get there in time to save four children who had perished in the fire. And he said that he's like, that's the one thing. He was like, I still see that in my mind. He goes, I
Yeah.
can't unsee that. And he has, he would have nightmares about it. He felt helpless, and it really, and he never talked to anybody about that. He shared that with me, over a beer, kind of the same thing. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, granddaddy, my God, I never knew, and I'd never
Mm-hmm.
seen him cry
Yeah.
until then.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And it was just like, oh, geez, this man who, he's a big guy. I mean, his, one finger looked like two of mine. He just had these big, hairy, he's a big man.
Sausages.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's absolutely. And he was strong as all get out. I mean, even in his 80s, he was still,
Mm-hmm.
but anyhow, yeah, it's amazing the things that we carry inside. Right. But in having somebody and that shared experience, that rating, yeah, there's something to that because of that shared experience. And wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. That brought back a memory for me too.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Right.
now, I'm looking at my watch here. We're
Mhm.
about an hour here already. I told you these things always go by quickly, right? When you have good folks on and there's
Yeah.
good stuff you're sharing. So, um, in terms of what you're doing today, anything else you want to talk about in terms of what you're doing with Pegasus Life Solutions? Anything you have coming
Um,
up?
well, at one point, like I said, I had mentioned to you, kind of off air, I had gone and co-authored a book with Jack to bring that awareness. That we've got an exceptionally high suicide rate, and I know that it's been talked about. And so I did that book to bring that awareness. I got to speak in DC at the National Press. But I felt I still need more because if like as the group that we're working with, the power of our story is sharing. It's one thing to say, the trauma or what you've gone through, and we're not trying to discredit that, but we don't want to keep rehashing it. Because we need to move forward. So I really would like to emphasize to folks how long you were prepared to sit in your stench before you were ready to say, okay, like just like a plant, okay, you have the fertilizer and eventually you're going to have to grow. If you want to thrive, you're going to have to grow. So I tell people, just think of this as, instead of post-traumatic stress and keep focusing on that, let's get post-traumatic growth. Let's move forward and just try to evolve and re-thrive and get our lives now. We can't, you're never going to fix the past. We can only live in the moment. But so let's just, try to thrive as best as we can
Right.
and pull those resources. So I do have another book coming out, and it's right now it's just getting into second editing, and again it's to try piece ourselves. And remember the military drill that we used to learn when right from basic training, they were teaching the left, right, step one, and you're like, shoot your foot, shut the foot, I mean forward, but to heel down. And so remember, like that's exactly it. We have to do this in digestible chunks, and don't think we're going to have like eat the whole elephant in one bite. We have,
Right.
so that's my I guess my last pearls of wisdom, that I really need to focus. Never think you're alone. Never isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Get with a community, because now there's lots. There's no excuse why you can't say there's no community out there for me, because there
Yes.
is. And
There absolutely is. Yeah.
and like I said, if you're having struggling with the finances, or you're struggling with your food or whatever, there are groups there for specifically for veterans. Like we have the veterans food back here too. Like I said, Homes for Heroes. We need that step up just to get your life. We've got all the different like in the States we have the V2I, Vets to Industry, that
Hmm.
help with all the career alignment for finding people jobs that are really good in transferring your skills
That's
and then
right.
putting it properly onto a resume. So those, like I said, we do have those resources now. Please, by all means, if you don't know, ask. Like
Right.
if you need help, ask. Swallow the pride and
Absolutely.
just ask. Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, all of that is game on. I mean, you're absolutely right. And, when you talk to, isolating, I think that's where it all goes off the rails, right? Because the isolation leads to depression, which can lead to severe depression, which can lead to alcohol, drugs, suicide. I mean, it's just that becomes a very negative path. And I think that's, I mean, there's other reasons, I guess, why folks commit suicide, right? It's a very
True.
complex thing, but I think I think the isolation thing is like the straw that maybe breaks the camel's back, so to
Mhm.
speak, because that sets you down a different trajectory. If you're not wanting to ask for help, if you're not wanting to reach out, some people are good at masking that too, right?
Mhm.
And because I mean, how many times do you hear when someone takes their life, there's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what? He would never do that, or she, I can't imagine. You never know what's happening behind the veil. And yeah, so yeah, I can't agree with you more vehemently about the isolation thing. If you start to feel that, that is an absolute sign that you need help. And
Mhm.
as proud as you may be, as yeah, you've been able to take care of yourself your whole life. Oh, God bless you. But you know what? Now it's your time to ask for help. So you
Yeah.
need to be brave enough and do that. And that's hard. I mean,
Mhm.
I know, for just a quick aside for me, I had a tough childhood too. I got through it like, many people, and had a successful life. And, I had tough times, but I never felt depressed, right? I never felt like that was ever. And I didn't think that people were weak who were. I just didn't understand it because
Mhm.
I'd always pushed through things.
Right.
And so my youngest daughter goes off to college, and, now both daughters are gone. It's very
Mhm.
quiet at the house. It's a very different life,
Yes.
and the gal who had been cutting my hair for years, and this is before COVID, right? But
Mhm. Mhm.
this is like 2000, maybe early 2018. And my daughter had left for college that fall of 2017, my youngest daughter. And she's like, Scott, I've noticed, can I ask you a personal question? I'm like, yeah, sure. What's going on? She's like, are you okay? I,
Mm.
well, what do you mean? She goes, well, something seems different with you. She goes, usually you come in and you're smiling and you're talkative, you joke around, and we have good conversations. She goes, like the last three times you've been in here, you've been very quiet. You like you're
Mm,
reflective with something, or and she goes, I just, and we'd become friends because she'd been cutting my
yeah,
hair for years. She
years.
goes, I'm just asking as a friend. And I said, oh, well, okay, well, yeah, I don't, and she goes, is it because your daughter is no longer home?
Mhm,
Because my youngest daughter, after my oldest left, it was
mhm.
just my youngest daughter. And so, we really bonded. And I was like, oh my God, that's man, that's I think you might be right. So she helped diagnose what
Yeah.
was most likely happening. And boy, that just having somebody share with me and be willing to ask me that question, are you okay? And I wasn't. I mean, I was actually, it sounds goofy as hell because I'm not that guy, right? But I
Mhm,
was. And it was something, I don't know. It's just without getting any further into that, but, and I got through it.
mhm,
But to me, it was significant. And I didn't know why I was feeling that way. And I wasn't talking to anybody
mhm.
about it until somebody was nice enough and cared enough to ask, hey, how are you? Are you okay? Now, I'm not saying that would have gone to any kind of, bad end, but I mean, depression
Mhm.
comes in, different
Yeah.
levels of depression. And I was absolutely, and so now, man, I look at that so differently.
Mm,
I'm empathetic now to where maybe I wasn't in the past because I didn't know. I just figured I had tough times, right?
mhm, mhm.
But I never like felt bad for myself. I always got through it, and I was wallowing in something, because that part of my life is over. I'm no longer a dad, but of course I am. I'm
Don't
just
worry,
not the
still
same
dad.
dad that
Yeah.
this is a different time of being a dad, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so well, Angel, I know we're getting on in time here. I thank you for your time today. This has been, I love bringing people on, people like you, because I always learn,
Mhm.
and then I can even share some of my stories,
Yeah.
as we're
Yeah.
talking here. So
Yes.
this is therapeutic, I hope, for a lot of folks when we have discussions like this, and
Mhm.
it's all designed to let folks know that there's an alternative to problems, that we all have problems when we transition from the military. It's significant, and we all have different paths that we choose and take as we leave service. But there are key things that we need to be aware of, the things that you discussed as we're leaving service. And so anytime I can have folks come on and talk to those things, it's going to benefit people who are coming our way. And then even people who have transitioned from service and are still, kind of figuring life out too, right? There's transition
Mhm.
in life. And so some of these elements of how you handle transition apply to these other things that we go through in life too. So I think there's a lot of benefit to having discussions like this. So what I want to do, once we're done, if you could send me, if you have any links,
Mhm.
website or any information you want to, pass on to me and Sarah. And then once this posted to the cloud, the recording, we're going to put it on YouTube. And then under the description part, any information you want to give us, like I just asked, any links or, like to the book and, websites or whatever, we can post that in there as well. So folks have access to be able to see what you're doing and find out more about you. And certainly you're on LinkedIn under
Yes.
S Angel Shaw, so folks can connect. I highly recommend that folks do connect with you on LinkedIn and see what you're all about. So, Angel, thank you again for your time.
Absolutely.
This has been a good interview.
Yeah, I thank you, Scott. Like I said, I'm honored that you're allowing me the opportunity to at least get a message out there. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're doing great stuff. So why wouldn't we want to know about that?
true.
Okay. Well, Angel, I know I'll be seeing you here again over the coming days as we're connected through the
Yeah.
Power of Our Story, and then that's where this interview will be posted as well on YouTube under Sarah Carell's Power of Our Story.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Angel, thanks again. You
Cheers.
take care.
Have a blessed day. Cheers.
You do the same.